According to Redfin, active listings across Georgia's major housing markets climbed more than 40% year over year in 2024. 40% more homes on the market, and far fewer buyers willing to touch them. Georgia used to mean something simple: warmer winters, cheaper land, room for ordinary families to build something real without bleeding dry every month. But here is what they are not telling you. Those listings are not moving. The buyers who were supposed to absorb all of this inventory have stopped showing up. Mortgage rates have pushed monthly payments past what most Georgia wages can support. And the institutional investors who spent years buying up starter homes by the thousands, they are already looking for the exit. Today, we count down the 10 Georgia cities where the housing market is turning into a disaster. We start with the early warning signs. We end where the damage is deepest. Stay until number 1. Atlanta is not just overpriced. It may be the most structurally fragile, large housing market in the American South right now. Subscribe before we start. These warning signs travel fast. Drive south toward the Florida line, and the world slows down. Spanish moss drapes heavy over the streets. The whole city feels like it should be insulated from whatever is hitting bigger markets. That calm is exactly what makes Valdosta dangerous. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Redfin, active listings in the Valdosta market rose more than 45% year over year in early 2025, while median days on market stretched past 60 days, nearly 3 times the 2021 pace. The root cause here is specific to Valdosta, and it is different from any other market on this list. When Moody Air Force Base rotates personnel out, those military families become forced sellers on a government timeline. They cannot wait for the market to recover. They have to move. And when dozens of them list at once, inventory stacks up with no floor underneath it. On r/Valdosta, a military spouse described listing their home in October, watching 2 price cuts over 4 months, and finally renting the property at a loss just to stop the bleeding before a PCS transfer. If you bought the median Valdosta home at the 2021 peak around $175,000, Redfin's comparable data suggests those properties are now trading closer to $158,000 in the same neighborhoods. That is $17,000 in paper losses. And that does not count 3 years of mortgage payments, insurance, or taxes while you waited to find out. Would you buy into a market where a transfer order can force your neighbor to undercut your listing price, and there is nothing either of you can do about it? Drive north into Middle Georgia, and Warner Robins looks reliable. Robins Air Force Base, working-class neighborhoods, practical prices. But what happened here during the cheap money boom has nothing to do with military. It is a builder story. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Redfin, new construction contract cancellation rates in mid-sized Georgia markets spiked above 25% in 2023 and held elevated through 2024. In Warner Robins, entire subdivisions opened and stalled. Streets were paved, frames went up, buyers disappeared. The root cause is pure builder arithmetic gone wrong. A home that penciled out at a 3% mortgage rate becomes a financial crisis at 7%. Builders kept building for a buyer pool that had already evaporated. Then they started offering incentives, rate buydowns, closing cost credits, free upgrades to move inventory that should never have been built in the first place. A buyer on a local Facebook homeowners group described walking away from a signed new build contract after the rate lock expired, losing the deposit rather than locking in a payment $500 higher per month than originally quoted. If you bought new construction in Warner Robins in 2022 at the builder's peak list price of around $280,000, you are now competing against the same builder's unsold inventory offered at $248,000 with $15,000 in incentives on top. The effective competing price is $233,000. That is a $47,000 gap between what you paid and what a new buyer pays today for the same floor plan next door. Next, would you buy in a city where the person who sold you your home is now undercutting your resale value from across the street? Arrive in Athens and the energy still feels alive. Football Saturdays, coffee shops, the permanent pulse of a university city. That surface energy hit a speculative feeding frenzy underneath. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Zillow, the Athens metro saw median home values climb more than 55% between 2019 and 2023, driven not by local wage growth, but by out-of-state landlords and institutional buyers treating student-adjacent neighborhoods like rental portfolios. As those investors over-leveraged vacancy started climbing, concessions followed. The root cause is a ceiling that investors refused to believe existed. Too many landlords chasing the same student tenants pushed rents until residents simply left doubled up or chose off-campus options. The demand they were betting on had a hard limit. Once it hit, the math reversed overnight. On r/Athens, a property manager described offering 2 months of free rent on a 12-month lease, something unimaginable 3 years earlier. The unit had been sitting for 49 days with no serious inquiries. If you bought an investment property in Athens in 2022 at the then median price of around $340,000, Zillow estimates comparable properties are now trading near $295,000 in several investor-heavy zip codes. That is $45,000 in paper losses for a property that is also generating less rental income than the model projected. Would you buy in a college town where the investors who inflated prices are now the ones panic listing, while the professors and nurses who actually live there still cannot afford to buy? Roll east toward the South Carolina border. Augusta wraps itself in Gulf mythology, colonial architecture, and quiet streets that make a risky investment look entirely respectable. For a few years, 1 week in April convinced people this market was a guaranteed income machine. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. Bloomberg and CNBC reported in 2024 that short-term rental markets in single-event cities whose STR demand is anchored to one recurring attraction, saw among the steepest occupancy declines in the country as supply flooded in during the boom years and could not be absorbed once the hype cooled. Augusta fits that pattern precisely. The root cause is a fantasy that investors ran without checking the math. A property that generates strong income during Masters Week cannot run a profitable annual operation on that 1 week alone. The mortgage shows up 12 times a year. The tournament shows up once. On r/Augusta, a seller described purchasing a furnished short-term rental in 2021, specifically around the tournament. By 2024, they had posted 2 consecutive years of falling net income and listed the property at a loss just to stop the monthly outflow. If you bought an Augusta short-term rental property for $310,000 in 2021, comparable listings in the same area are now moving closer to $270,000. That is $40,000 in paper losses before you account for the years of carrying costs on months when your calendar sat empty. Would you bet your savings on a market that only looks profitable for 1 week a year? If this is hitting close to home, hit subscribe. We cover these markets every week so you can stay ahead of what is coming. Steer back to Central Georgia. Macon offers something that looked irresistible during the boom, cheap houses with bones. Out-of-state flippers arrived with gray flooring, white paint, and the confidence of people who had never read a Macon income statement. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Atom, Macon consistently ranks among Georgia metros with the highest rate of investor-purchased properties that are relisted at losses or that fail to sell within standard market timelines, with a meaningful share of flips requiring price reductions of 20 to 40% before eventually transacting. The root cause is a market that cannot be manufactured into something it is not. When median household income in Bibb County sits well below the Georgia state average, no amount of fresh countertops creates a qualified buyer at an inflated price. The arithmetic does not bend because a flipper needs it to. The Macon Telegraph reported on a block in the Pleasant Hill neighborhood where several investor-owned homes sat partially renovated or fully vacant, while longtime residents watched their street become a showcase of failed speculation, empty windows and overgrown yards where families used to live. If you bought a Macon flip property for $120,000 in 2021, expecting to renovate and exit at $180,000, the buyer at that number does not exist in this zip code. Properties in similar condition are clearing closer to $135,000. That is a $45,000 swing from where you needed to be, and the renovation costs came out of your pocket regardless. Would you buy in a market where the only people who believed in it were the ones who left the moment they stopped making money? Now, the road opens toward the coast. Savannah makes its offer cobblestones, oak canopies, ghost tours, and the oldest real estate sales pitch in the South. They are not making more of it. But coastal beauty comes with a financial reckoning that most buyers see only after they sign. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. The Wall Street Journal reported in 2024 that homeowners' insurance costs in coastal Georgia surged more than 40% over 3 years. And for older Savannah properties requiring flood coverage on top of standard policies, the compounding effect has pushed total annual insurance costs well beyond what short-term rental income can consistently offset. At the same time, Savannah's STR market is now saturated. Too many furnished investment properties chasing the same tourist pool. The root cause is a double squeeze that the pandemic-era spreadsheet never modeled. Rising insurance plus softening STR revenue is a combination that turns cash-flowing rentals into monthly losses without any change in the mortgage. On BiggerPockets, a Savannah landlord described how their 2024 insurance renewal alone shifted a previously profitable Victorian rental into negative cash flow, roughly $400 underwater every month. No other variables changed. If you bought a Savannah investment property for $480,000 in 2021, comparable listings are now trading near $430,000 in several historic district zip codes. That is $50,000 in paper losses. Add insurance cost, increases of roughly $8,000 a year, compounded over 3 years, and the real number is closer to $74,000 in value destruction and added carrying costs combined. Would you buy a coastal dream house if the insurance bill alone is enough to sink the entire investment thesis? Drive into North Atlanta's orbit, and Alpharetta states its case without saying a word. Manicured subdivisions, tech campus energy, homes priced to announce that the people inside them have made it. But the buyers who built those numbers were never permanent. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Redfin Luxury Inventory in Atlanta's northern suburbs, homes priced above $800,000 rose more than 60% year over year in 2024. Median days on market in the jumbo tier stretched to more than 90 days. And median sale prices in that bracket fell as sellers finally accepted that last year's number was gone. The root cause is a buyer pool built on two forces that reversed at the same time. Return to office mandates removed the remote worker logic. Rising jumbo mortgage rates, which hit 8% in 2023, before pulling back slightly, turned a $900,000 home into a monthly payment that required income most buyers, even in tech, could not comfortably carry. On ER/Atlanta, a homeowner described watching a property on their street listed at $1,100,000 sit for 130 days before a price reduction to $960,000. Still no contract at the time of posting. If you bought an Alpharetta home for $900,000 in 2022, comparable properties in the same subdivisions are now moving closer to $780,000. That is $120,000 in paper losses before you count 3 years of jumbo mortgage payments, averaging near $5,000 a month. Would you buy into a luxury suburb where the status is still on display, but the buyer who could afford it has quietly left the room? Head north toward Lake Lanier, and the scenery sells the story before you even park. Water views, mountain air. The promise that you can escape Atlanta without actually leaving it. During the pandemic, that promise felt permanent. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Zillow, the Gainesville metro ranked among Georgia's most accelerated markets between 2020 and 2022, with median home values climbing more than 40% in under 30 months. As return-to-office policies solidified through 2023 and 2024 inventory rose sharply, while prices pulled back from their peaks. The root cause is demand that was always temporary, and everyone involved pretended otherwise. Local wages in Hall County are anchored to healthcare, poultry processing, and service work. None of those jobs changed. None of those incomes grew to support the prices remote workers from Atlanta imported into the market when they thought they could live anywhere. On r/Atlanta, a couple described buying a lake area home in 2021 for remote work, then facing a mandatory return to office order in 2023. They listed the property and watched it sit for 4 months. They accepted an offer $30,000 below their ask just to stop carrying 2 households at the same time. If you bought a home in Gainesville in 2021 for $420,000 on a remote work lifestyle assumption, Redfin's comparable data suggests similar properties are now clearing closer to $370,000 in the same zip codes. That is $50,000 gone before you account for a single mortgage payment. Would you buy a house built on a lifestyle your employer can cancel with one email? Drive west to the Chattahoochee River into a city that should have been protected by its military anchor and its steady working-class foundation. Instead, Columbus became a target. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Apartment List, Columbus posted some of the steepest rent declines in Georgia through 2024, with asking rents in certain zip codes falling more than 8% year over year as institutional landlord inventory competed against itself for the same shrinking pool of tenants. The root cause is a corporate landlord accumulation strategy that worked only as long as rents kept rising. Investors bought up starter homes, expecting 5 to 8% annual rent increases in perpetuity. When demand softened instead, the cash flow model collapsed from underneath. Forced sellers followed. And when too many institutional sellers list at once, neighborhoods absorb the damage, whether they asked for it or not. The Columbus Ledger-Inquirer reported on investor-owned properties along the Midland Road corridor, sitting vacant for months, former rentals that could no longer attract tenants at current rates, but could not sell at prices that covered the original debt. If you bought a Columbus rental property for $180,000 in 2021, expecting steady rent, increases falling rents have already cost you roughly $300 a month in projected cash flow. Over 36 months, that is more than $10,000 in income you planned for and never collected. Meanwhile, the property has not appreciated. It has not recovered. It has just waited. Would you buy in a city that Wall Street treated like a spreadsheet and is now abandoning the same way? And here we are, the center of the storm. Atlanta is not just another overheated market with nervous sellers and a few uncomfortable price cuts. Atlanta is the machine that convinced everyone the Southern housing boom would never end. And Atlanta is where the consequences of that belief are now arriving all at once. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Apartment List, Atlanta posted rent declines for multiple consecutive quarters through 2024, with some submarkets falling 10% or more year over year, as a historic wave of new apartment supply hit the market simultaneously. According to Redfin, single-family inventory in the metro climbed sharply during the same period, with days on market stretching across all price tiers. And Bloomberg reported that institutional investor purchase volume in Atlanta dropped significantly from its 2021 to 2022 peak, meaning the buyers who inflated the market are now pulling back precisely as supply is rising. The root cause is compounding failure at scale. Overbuilding drove down rents. Falling rents broke the cash flow model that justified investor purchases. Investor retreat added inventory. Rising rates crushed the non-investor buyer. And the affordability gap, the structural distance between what Atlanta homes cost and what Atlanta wages can support, never closed. It just got papered over with cheap debt and optimism. A report from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution described neighborhoods in DeKalb and Clayton counties where investor-owned homes bought during the boom are now sitting vacant, or listed at prices that do not cover original acquisition costs. Streets of dark windows in markets that were supposed to be the future of the American South. If you bought a single-family rental in Atlanta for $450,000 in 2021, expecting rent growth and appreciation to deliver your return, Redfin data shows comparable properties now selling closer to $390,000 in several affected submarkets. That is $60,000 in paper losses. If your rents also fell 10%, you are collecting roughly $250 fewer dollars every month than your original model required. Over 3 years, that is another $9,000 in income that never arrived. The skyline still looks strong, the restaurants are still full, the city still hums. But underneath the noise, one quiet question is forming in this housing market. What happens when the investors who helped inflate Atlanta all decide to leave at the same time? Would you buy at the center of a bubble when the people who built it are already searching for the exit? 10 cities, one pattern. Military towns where transfer orders turn ordinary sellers into forced sellers with no exit. Builder towns where unsold inventory undercuts every resale on the same street. College towns where investor greed priced out the people who actually live there. Coastal markets bleeding under insurance costs, and half-empty STR calendars. A luxury suburb losing the tech buyers who made it feel invincible. And Atlanta, the machine at the center, showing what happens when Wall Street money overbuilding falling rents and a broken affordability equation all arrive at the same address. The damage does not announce itself. It arrives as one price cut, then another. One vacancy, then a block of them. One investor listing quietly, then a flood. The people most at risk right now are not the ones who made the loudest promises during the boom. They are the families who bought late. The workers who got priced out before they ever had a chance. The homeowners now asking themselves whether their equity was ever real or just a number someone printed on a listing and called a market. Georgia still looks warm from the highway, but the numbers underneath are telling a different story. The warning signs were always there. The question is, were you watching? Subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and drop your city in the comments below. This video is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial or real estate advice. Always consult a licensed professional before making any investment decisions.